Over 1 million teachers use IXL in their classrooms every day for one reason. They love it. The gold standard teaching and learning solution, IXL provides thousands of instructional resources, actionable analytics, and assessments to increase teacher capacity and effectiveness. IXL takes the guesswork out of lesson planning with ready made plans. Built in engagement tools such as customizable competitions make learning fun for students. Dr. Trujillo, superintendent at Tuscan Unified School District, says this about IXL, quote, "For the teacher, IXL opens up the door to be a lot more effective and provide more differentiated instruction to the different subgroups of students in their class." End quote. Empower your teachers with the tools and insights they need to enhance instruction, all in one single, easy to use platform. Get started today at IXL.com.
You're listening to Monday Matters, a Principal Matters podcast production.
Hi, friends. This is Will Parker back with my co-host, Dr. Jen Schwanke, for a Monday Matters. Jen, this is coming out in January. I'm just going to be full disclosure. You and I recorded this before break because we are committed to not working over break as much as we can. But there are some people who are back to work today, and there will be some people that are coming back to work in a couple of days. I wanted to talk about what are some of the practices we each have for setting goals. And one of those practices that I have includes some reflection questions. So I want to do two things here. I kind of want to hear how you reflect as you're wrapping up a year. And then I want to kind of share some reflection questions with you and maybe put you on the spot for some feedback.
I'm ready.
Yeah. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So before I jump into my questions with you, I'm just curious because everybody's different, Jen, and I'm a very you have pushed back very many times in my life and said, "Well, that works for you, but it won't work for me."
Right.
So I'm just curious, before I show you some reflection questions, what are some what times of the year are best for you to just kind of reset?
Right. The times of year when I work with principals, particularly new principals, I try to remind them to really take advantage of slow times. There are slow times in this work, and often principals feel guilty about that. They feel like they should always be running around with a fire hose putting out fires. But there are quiet times, and those are the times I think that we have to take advantage of to reflect. And we are recording this before the new year, but we recently recorded an episode. It was on Monday Matters. It came out on December 22nd. And you and I were reflecting on the year. And you had created a document of all the people we had interviewed for the last year. And our listeners with astute ears could probably hear me kind of stumble because I was blown away by how many guests we had talked to, how much we had put out there. And then where you said something like reflect on who you've been and who you've worked with. And I had to go back to my calendar and then you said, I forgot I wrote a book. I wrote a book. So all of that is there, you and I immersed in this work, and we had forgotten some of the most significant things that we had done. All of that is to say, it's critical that we sit down and we reflect.
Mhm.
And if you haven't taken notes or you don't have a website like Will does, where we can go through and look at our guests, look back at your calendar, look back at some things that happened, some meetings you had, some notes you took, and really reflect on how you probably moved the needle quite a bit in your school with your teachers, with instructional leadership, with PD. You've probably made a big difference and you already forget it. So I think that's why it's important to take advantage of those slow times and say, okay, what have we been doing?
That's so good, Jen. And reflection doesn't have to happen just any time, a certain time of the year. Now, I do have some built-in times for myself. Usually, a holiday break is a good time for me to reflect, and then usually the end of a school year. So there's usually like twice a year that I do some really serious looking back, looking forward. Um, I'm also a person that's probably a little bit obsessed with goal setting. Sometimes I think it's probably ridiculous how much I think about goals and mapping things out, but it's also benefited me because I try to take time to really think through certain categories. And so with that in mind, I've in a couple of masterminds that I was leading at the end of the semester, I brought 4 questions to this group, just to reflect on looking back. And the first one was, what were some major milestones for you this past year? So I'm going to actually throw that question out to you, Jen. When you think back, and I know we did a whole series looking back a couple of weeks ago, but when you think back to milestones from this past year, what's something you would just pick?
Um, Milestones for me, I'm gonna answer this in 2 ways. This is putting me on the spot, by the way. You told me before we recorded you were going to. There's 2 answers to that. One is going to be my, internal professional growth, and that would be I continue to refine my ability to pause, wait, and make a more calculated decision. This was not my jam early in my career, and I'm still working on it. I'm still working on it. I want to work quickly. I want to think fast. That's one of my greatest skills is my ability to think fast. However, that's a recipe to make a lot of mistakes. So I'm internally, that's my professional milestones is I'm making progress, but I'm continuing to work on it. And then I also have really enjoyed, I still have my work as a deputy superintendent here in central Ohio. And I really like that because it keeps me grounded in the latest things going on. But I've been able to translate that to help other districts as well. And some of the things I learned a lot from John Spencer with about AI. I've learned a lot from many of our guests, but a lot about staying grounded in the work, remembering the students, remembering that instruction is at the heart of what we're supposed to be doing. There's a lot of noise out there, but just staying in tune to all of that.
That's so wonderful. So I want every question I pose to you, I want anyone listening to consider how you would answer that question. Think
Well,
about your milestones. Go ahead.
and you have to answer it too, Will. Is
Okay.
that I
Okay.
thought that was a given? I thought.
Then I'll reciprocate.
Okay.
So I'm trying to think of some things I haven't already said in the previous episodes, but I'll say this, because it is important to me. It's a major milestone when I think back to 25 because, I when I think about my business, the work I do now full time with Principal Matters, I think about it in terms of school years. So 23, 24 was my first full year. 24, 25 was my second year. 25, 26 is my third full year. So I'm right in the middle of my third full year of this work, Jen. And just in case anyone's wondering, this is a milestone for me.
Mhm.
It's been unbelievably rewarding. It is, it's I almost feel guilty saying it out loud that I'm getting to do the things I dreamed of, that it's providing wonderfully for my family. It's given me the ability to hire Emily, my oldest daughter, as a full-time employee, not just an independent contractor. Um, and so it's just, sometimes hard to believe that I get to do this. And so that's been a major milestone. And then I'll just say personally, as my kids have aged into now adults, they're all in their 20s, it's also been really beautiful to watch that transition of becoming friends with my adult children. And so even though I don't get to see them as much as I'd want, I miss them horribly being at home. There's nothing that hole I don't think is ever gonna get filled. It happens when they leave the nest. But, man, I'm just so grateful for
Mhm.
the adults that they are and the relationships that we have too.
Right. Well, and I think it's important, and I love that we talk about that on the show because I want to model for our listeners that we are not principal robots. We are
Mhm.
not these people who wake up and say, "Here's what you should do about a certain problem." We have our families, we have our hobbies, we work out, we take care of our bodies. We are so much more than principal matters. However, there's a lot of this. The passion that we have for it. I tell people all the time, my jam is principles. That's what I love. I feel like that was the job that I did best and the way I can continue to give back to the profession. And that's really what we're trying to do, Will.
Okay, so my next question
Okay.
can be a personal or professional, but when you think about a goal that you set for yourself last year, what's a positive outcome that you're proud of?
Okay. Putting out my fifth book, Trusted. That was a
Mhm.
goal. I thought I was done writing books, and then that one wouldn't stop getting itself written. So that was a real point for me. How about
Yeah.
you?
I'm gonna say the same thing. When I think back, we laughed a few episodes ago when I forgot that I'd written a book, but that was a lot of work, and it takes a lot of focus and a lot of time, and there's something every time you hold the new one in your hands, you feel like, "Oh, it's felt like birthing a child," but that's a big achievement. Here's question 3, um, some tough challenges you had to overcome.
Um, I continue to struggle with what's next,
Mhm.
for me, and my problem is, I feel like I'm getting older, and I don't wanna run out of this massive amount of energy that I have. I do have a ton of energy, so I feel like I want to get a lot done. So, I'm probably a little frantic about that, right? And I don't know why I feel like a clock is ticking. There's no reason that I think that I can't continue to do this, but just struggling with what next steps are. And I think a lot of principals are. I bet that resonates with a lot of people out
I
there,
was gonna say you're not alone, and
right?
that's one of the reasons I wrote "Whose Permission Are You Waiting For?" is because so many talented, high achieving, wonderfully successful leaders will reach out to me and say, I'm really chewing on what's next," and so sometimes you don't have because of the roles you serve in, you're it it sometimes there's fewer and fewer of you in that role, and you don't always have a big circle of others to say, "I'm struggling with this next step," because the circle gets smaller, it seems, with each step that you take. So I'm glad you said that, Jen. When I thought about this question, I could list more than one, but I'll just name one. I think when I think back to this past year, I've really had to wrestle with how to maintain relationships that are honest and healthy with how divisive the politics have become in our culture. And I really feel like there's this obsession in our culture with culture wars. Like, let me, and sometimes it's precipitated through social media or whatever because algorithms drive outrage, et cetera. And so, I'm just going to give a shout out to my kids. They have modeled this really well for me. My own adult kids have been really good at being able to just kind of pause hard conversations, either from people with whom they agree or disagree, and just say, "Hey, let's look at this from more than one perspective. That this is probably more nuanced than you realize, or let's remember the person here is different from the thing that they're talking about." And so that's been a challenge for me, Jen, in a different way than I think it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and I think it will probably continue to be. What, when you look back at your milestones, positive outcomes, difficult challenges, what would you say is a major lesson you've learned this past year?
The lesson I continue to learn over and over, and I must have a really thick head because I've been working on this for a couple of decades, is that calm begets calm. People come to me. Last month there were some rumors of some ICE agents in my area, and the fear is real. The fear is real, and it's terrifying. And people were scared, and they were so angry, and I found myself feeling hysterical too about all the ways that we were gonna need to respond, and my superintendent was the one that said, we have to be the calm. We have to be the calm." And that doesn't just, indicate a response to immigration, right? It's everything. People look to us to be the calm, and so that's something that I continually work on. It's continually reinforced to me how critical it is in leadership to be the calm. Even if inside your stomach is roiling about, choose calm.
That's so good, Jen. I think I would answer that question, and I'm sure this is a lesson I'll never stop learning, but it's just helpful for me to stop and remind myself I'm not completely in control. Like, there are certain things I can control. I can control my actions or my words. Um, I can control my response. I can't control other people. I can't control global events. I am not God. And so sometimes it's just an important place for me to revisit, to let go of the things I can't, but then ask what can I do? I've told this story in other settings too, but I want to just brag on Emily, who's going to be editing the show. So Emily, if you hear this, I bragged on you before, but um, Emily cares deeply about what's going on in the world and is equally concerned about chaos and politics. But just about every week this year, she's volunteered to serve in food to homeless people down in our city. And so she's looked at the landscape of what can I do or what can't I do? And she's chosen a place where she can do something. And I just admire that. And so even when I look at our work, Jen, in schools and with leaders, it's just a good reminder to me that
Right.
certain things I can't control, but my goodness, what I can control is the thing I need to probably focus
Right.
on.
Well, and I love that Emily, this is not what this show's about. Sorry, Emily, but I love that she's doing the things she can do, right? Because we can sit around and bemoan all of this and be so angry and let it get us, or we can say, okay, I can take action. I can do some one thing. And I think our young people are actually very good at that. And I think we have to look at them for guidance on this.
Well, as we find a place to wrap up here, I want to just say this to leaders. Reflecting back is an important part, I think, of growth, of moving forward. And so just a little homework as you're thinking forward. I just want to encourage you to consider, what are your goals this year for yourself personally? Where do you want to grow as a person? Where do you want to grow as a family, or whoever you care the deepest about? How do you want to grow in those relationships? Where do you want to grow socially? Because sometimes we forget, oh, yeah, I have friends. I need to stay connected to them too. Where do we want to grow in our own wellness physically? Where do we want to grow in terms of our own vocations and professions and careers? It's okay to sit down and think about that growth. I do a little practice every year where I set specific goals in those areas. I write them in the front of my journal, and then I just reflect on them occasionally to make sure that I'm keeping my eye on the target of where I want to grow there, Jen. So I hope that was helpful as a reflection together.
Well, you know what I did? I wrote down some things I want to do in the new year. One of them was break my addiction to Starbucks refreshers, and then I crossed it out because I'm going to keep that. They make me happy, so I'm going to keep having my dragon drink. Sorry,
So
people.
so so my family laughs at me. I'm holding my favorite coffee cup, which is tiny because I drink espresso, and I will usually say, if someone calls me at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, they'll say, "What are you doing?" I'll say, "I'm having my second happiest moment of the day," because this addiction is something that I'm happy to hold on to.
That's right. That's right.
Well, Principal Matters listeners, I hope you set great goals and hold on to the good things that you want to continue to do as you move into 2026. Happy New Year. And thanks, Jen, for checking in. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Monday Matters.